It's certainly easy to talk about the stars, and everybody wants to talk about Marvin Harrison. Everybody wants to talk about Cal McCord and all of that stuff. But I don't think there is a more appropriate place to start our show than by talking about the defense, because the reality is the defense not only kept Ohio State in the game, but made some big plays to shift momentum back in their favor. Obviously, the pick six from Josh Proctor is the most prominent one that comes to mind. There were a few moments in the first quarter where they couldn't get off the field on third down, but all things considered, I actually thought this was probably the best defensive line performance in a game that we've seen so far this year. And it's not even a statistical thing. They were assignment sound. They created some pressure, but there were plenty of things they did that will never show up in a box score that showed me, hey, this defensive line is really starting to put it together.
And, I think it was so good to see too, and my perspective on it was like, hey, this is the first legit test that they're going to face through the air. Notre Dame was good. Notre Dame was more of a bounce attack, but this was a legit test through the air. And you saw early on, like Maryland made some plays, and it's a great touchdown catch in the first quarter. They were able to move the ball just a touch, and just test Ohio State in ways that they hadn't been tested before, right? Having some third down conversions and having a long drive where it's like, all right, Ohio State this defense has been so good to this point where it hasn't experienced any of this. And you loved how they responded, right? Got in the red area and shut it down, held them to a couple field goals, which was awesome to see, and then, you give up the touchdown pass, but they come right back out, right? Denzel Burke has a great PBU in the second half in the end zone, so you see some things that are just really key pieces of, hey, you're not going to be facing teams where you're going to shut them down. Like, that's not a realistic thing. You're not shutting every team down the rest of the year. I promise you, in a couple of weeks when we play Penn State, you're not going to shut them down on every drive, but it's how you respond. And it was really good to see how this defense responded because, frankly, with the way the offense played in the entire first half, if the defense didn't respond after that first touchdown drive, Ohio State's looking at 17, 21-point deficit going into halftime, but they just didn't let it happen. After that bad fake punt or whatever happened, the rollback, I know it wasn't called, but, after that play, sure, you give up a touchdown very next, on that next series. But after that, it was like nuts. It was dead nuts. It was done. And so like that was really good to see because that defense was a key component today because it could have kind of gotten away if that defense didn't show up, and they really did.
I just felt like there were some moments where leadership was really necessary, and the guys that you expect to step up did, and even a couple guys that are showcasing an ability to say, hey, maybe you should think about me in more of a leadership role. Again, Josh Proctor had a pick six, and so that's what people remember from the game. I'm actually more likely to remember some of the vicious hits that he made today. Proctor played with an attitude. And like he's an aggressive guy in general, but man, did he make some plays. Lathan Ransom laid the wood big time this afternoon. I hate that I'm pointing this out, but it was so rare. Tommy Eichenberg missed a critical tackle. And when you get to the point now where you're pointing out missed tackles from a guy that is, in my opinion, playing like an All-American, those are mistakes that happen so rarely that we actually remember them. Mike Hall, how about the I guess roughing the passer call that I just didn't really agree with on what the referee deemed as a high hit. They turned around and made a play when he got another chance. It was more than anything, it was Ohio State's defense and the way they didn't panic when the offense wasn't clicking, especially in the first half. The defense took it upon themselves to figure it out and keep things going. And obviously when you score defensively, that's a huge help. But I love the way that unit is putting the team on their back now repeatedly, right? It's the offense. In fact, I've got a great stat here. It was going into the start of the second half. There was a stretch where Ohio State's offense for the course of several games at that point, it really struggled. Entering the first drive of the second half, Ohio State had scored one touchdown in their previous 9 drives and only 2 touchdowns in their previous 15 drives over a 3-game stretch. That ain't good enough. Now, you played a really good Notre Dame team. That was part of it. And they were bad in the first half. But the defense figured it out and kept them in it.
And we've talked about it a number of times too. When you have a defense that can shut the door like these guys can, it keeps you in games like this. And this was a perfect example. And I think the best thing is, and what I was feeling, and my buddies had to jump me a little bit, but I was feeling that, Taulia Tagovailoa wasn't playing well. And I kept saying, like, man, is this guy, is it a function of them not having the best competition? I was just texting my boys and they're like, dude, this defense is awesome. This is an awesome defense. And when you think about it, like, they really are. And we talked about this too, like with the way Maryland's set up, when they're relying on the pass game, if Ohio State's able to shut that down, that makes it look really bad, right? When Taulia finishes, 21 of 41, throws 2 picks and finishes with under 200 yards passing. When you look at that stat line, it's not good, but it's also like they got behind. Okay, the first half was like, okay, Maryland's in control and they couldn't pull away. And when you figured they couldn't pull away, you knew they were in trouble, because if you let a good team like Ohio State hang around, things like the second half will happen. But when you get behind and you just have to start chucking it, and literally we saw it, JT was able to pin his ears back. Jack Sawyer able to pin his ears back. Mike Hall got some pressures in there. Sonny Styles I think, potentially you can talk about it as, one of the plays of the second half, which when the game was still in the balance, has that tackle for loss. And when we were texting about it too, like the back view of it, it shows the whole defense is to the left. Sonny makes that blitz, and if Taulia can break that tackle, there's running room. He's not going to go for 80, but he's getting a first down and getting a chunk gain. So you just saw contributions from everybody. You saw a great D-line play. You saw awesome A+ safety play. You saw a really good cornerback play, and you saw a good linebacker play. And that's what we're coming to expect. Similar to what Coach Day said last week. When you start bringing home A's in chemistry, that's now the bar, right? And that defense continually A+ after A+ after A+ every single week. When you have that, you're in every single game.